cried like 3 times, so I'm going to get through this without crying, I swear. Because this is not my kind of thing.
You need to introduce yourself.
I'm going to. I'm Adam. I'm his grandson. I think that like, flying up here today, first of all, I found out I was supposed to speak Wednesday night. And it was just this kind of like, hey, you know, you're going to talk. And all of a sudden you start, I mean, you watch the slideshows. I have, you know, close to 30 years worth of slides I'm trying to put into, you know, what do you say at something like this? And I talked actually to my boss. I'm a college lacrosse coach. And my boss is from Long Island. And my boss is, all these ways we've described, my grandfather is tough and set in his ways. Stubborn is a common word. My boss is that way. So I was chatting with him. He actually recently lost his mother. And we were talking about, you know, how do you speak at these things? And his comment was kind of try to find a general theme and go with that. Kind of get you, you know, on the right path. So one of the things that we teach our guys, and what I've been taught as a coach, is it's important to be respected even if you're not always liked. And it's something that I was taught at an early age as a coach, and I kind of think I was taught at like 5 years old by my grandfather. Now I look back on it, even though I didn't know it. You know, that phrase, I think, to me kind of encapsulates my relationship with my grandfather. He's tough. And I remember growing up, and his big thing the first time I saw him was we'd shake hands, and it was this challenge of like, could he squeeze my hand so hard I started to cry? And I used to just look at him like, I'm not gonna lose. And I would lose every time. And I think when I graduated from college, he shook my hand and he started to squeeze it. And I think he realized, maybe I'm not gonna win this one. So he just backed off all of a sudden, and it was no longer a game. I was going, wait a second, how does this work? But I think it was a classic way of him kind of admitting maybe it was a passing of the torch. But for me, it was from an early age, looking at some of these pictures, it's funny. It was growing up with the idea of, you know, if you're going to do something, do it well. And if you're going to have an opinion, like my dad said, you can have all the opinions in the world, but you sure as heck better have a reason for that opinion and better be able to back it up. And it's funny that my sister mentioned the email, because I was all jazzed when he got the internet because we could communicate easier. Because I'm not a big talk on the phone guy anyways, and all of a sudden it's like, you have an email from Robert Stewart. And it's like every article in the New York Times. But it's not every article in the New York Times. It's every article with the commentary from Robert Stewart. I'm going, how much time does this guy have? And I kind of thought, well, he's actually got a lot of time. This is what he does. So I probably spent a couple months getting these. And it's, you know, I'd like cordially read a couple in case he called so I knew what I was talking about. But I was kind of going, this is out of control. And finally he sent one, and I just really disagreed with what he wrote. And I was like, all right, here we go. Reply. Started typing my reply, and it probably took me about 3 hours to write the reply. So I was going back and checking the typos and having people come in and make sure it was grammatically correct. I felt like I was writing a paper in college again, and I'm like, you know, an employed adult. And my coworker's like, what are you doing? I'm like, trust me, it needs to be perfect. So I send it, and all I get back is, good point, RJS. And in some ways it was a moral victory, but I'm kind of going, you could have thrown a little bit more in there, but it probably killed him to just write those 2 words. But I mean, it's kind of funny, and to me, you know, not that I, you know, laugh in the face of, you know, someone passing away, but I do think that, like my sister said, the older we got, the more you appreciate anybody, I really believe. And I really think that the older I got, the more I really appreciated not only my relationship with him, but what he was trying to accomplish, I mean, hey, as a person. You know, we always laugh that, you know, RJ got turned into like a verb and a noun and an adverb, and it's pretty impressive when your initials can get turned into like every form of the English language because of who you are. And he really was a person that was bigger than, he had a bigger impact than just, you know, his own being. And I think that he liked that. But I think that he took great responsibility in that. And that's something I'll always appreciate. You know, to this day, like I said, I'm a coach, so I'm a teacher. And, you know, every day we talk with our teams about discipline, and poise and all this stuff, and I'm looking at, you know, the bombing missions he flew at 20 years old. I'm kind of looking at our guys going, you can't execute a simple offense. My grandfather's flying bombing missions against Nazis. Come on, like, this is, you know, this is pretty easy. And he had a way of putting things into perspective that way. The last story I'll tell that I really think kind of summarizes my grandfather and I is, I now currently drive a 1999 red Volkswagen Jetta that used to be here. I'm sure you might have seen it popping around this island, probably 85 miles an hour, because that's the only way he could drive with his hair on fire. And he actually had some great hair for, you know, for his age. It was impressive. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But I get this call from my dad, and he's like, I got this red Jetta out here. What do you want me to do with it? At first I'm going, red Jetta, what are you talking? And then all of a sudden I was going, you gotta be kidding me. Well, years ago, when I was a sophomore in high school, my grandfather had a vintage VW Beetle, and it was beautiful, completely restored. I remember seeing it, and I was kind of like, how do I ask him for that car without asking him for that car? Well, it became very easy. In typical RJ fashion and a competitive nature, he said, if you get a 1200 on your SATs, the car is yours. And once again, very black and white, like, here you go. Well, I got an 1190. And that's a true story.
That's a true story.
Yes. So I open up the SAT scores, and most people at this time would have been kind of excited. I'm kind of going, oh, this is going to get me into a, you know, pretty good college. No, I'm devastated. Because he calls, he's like, what'd you get? I'm like, I got an 1190. He's like, well, that's not a 1200. I was like, no, it's not. Well, 3 weeks later, a storm hit the coast, North Carolina, flash flood, totaled the Beetle, which I still think is karma to this day. Well, he gets the Jetta in its place, and we start talking. I give him a hard time because the Jetta is not quite as cool as the Beetle. And he says, well, if the Jetta outlasts me, you can have the Jetta. It's just a gentleman's agreement. So I said, perfect. And he kind of looked at me with this grin and said, because 1190 is not quite a 1200. I said, fair enough. So to this day, right now, the red Jetta is parked at the Columbus airport. I will drive that thing until it can't drive anymore. But it's one thing that, as cliche as it sounds and as corny as it sounds, every time I get in it, it reminds me that an 1190 isn't quite a 1200. And it reminds me of all these little things. And I think the one thing it really does remind me of is you don't always have to be liked, but you need to earn people's respect. And I think that that's something that he did, and it's, you know, evident by people being here and by everybody who was impacted by him. So on behalf of our family, I thank you all very much for being here. And when you watch that slideshow again, notice that there's a lot of bicycles, not a lot of helmets.